Right, so what we're going to learn today, so we're going to talk about the right way to get more Google reviews. We're also going to cover what APRA says about Google reviews, and we'll talk about what to do if your patient reviews disappear. And this is topical because something happened with Google reviews within the last week, which we'll talk more about later on. I'll also give you some tips on what or how you should respond to both positive and negative reviews. And we're going to look at what to do in the case of fake or inappropriate reviews. Now, if you've got any questions as we go along, please type them in the chat, and I'll try to answer them as we go. So before we do any of that, who am I? Well, so my name is Paul Selloway. I'm the owner of Optics Digital Marketing. I've been doing digital marketing and web consulting since 2008. So I've been working with WordPress and helping clients with SEO since way back then. In December 2022, I started Optics Digital Marketing as an agency exclusively for working with eye care professionals in Australia and New Zealand. I've published several articles with My Vision Optometry magazine. There'll be one coming out fairly soon, I think, about LinkedIn, coincidentally. And in that period of time, I've worked with more than a dozen independent eye care practices around Australia. So I won't go into the details of some of the results that I've been able to achieve. If you want to learn more about those, you can go back and look at last week's broadcast. But just the headline numbers are: one contact lens specialist practice. We managed to get a 60% plus growth in organic traffic in the space of a year. There's another practice which specializes in ortho K. We doubled their web traffic in the space of 4 months. There's a dry eye practice. We managed to double their traffic in the space of a month, which is bananas. And another practice where they have a focus on myopia control, among other things, but an important part of it's myopia control. And with that practice, we managed a 10x increase in their organic traffic over 18 months. Right, so what are Google reviews and why do they matter? Well, I'm assuming that since you're here, you probably have seen Google reviews, but so they're an opportunity for people who've had some interaction with your business to leave a comment and leave a star rating. Now they don't actually have to leave a comment, but anyone can leave a star rating of your business. Now these show up in your Google business profile. So if you've got a business, you should have a Google business profile. Well, if depending on what type of business it is, but with a bricks and mortar business, you definitely should have one. And the reviews are a tab within that Google business profile. Now the totals of those reviews and your average star rating shows up in what we call the local map pack. Now the local map pack, if you look at this graphic to the right hand side here, so you can see that I think I might have searched for like optometrist in Sydney or something like that. I don't remember the exact search term, but you can see here it's got a little map, and there's actually like a Google ad placement at the top there, and then 3 listings below, and you can see like the first one has got a 4.9 star rating with 69 reviews. The one below that, 5-star, 299 reviews. One below that, 4.9 with 27 reviews. So an interesting thing about this too is if you look closely, I'm not sure if you can see this, but it shows how far away this business is from wherever you're searching. So you can see here, like the second result, it says this practice, the eyepiece, is 400 meters away, whereas the second one is 220 meters. So, sorry, the third listing is 220 meters. So Google is actually showing a practice that's further away, like geographically, but they're probably doing that because this business has more reviews. So the number of reviews and your star rating appear to be like an important factor in whether or not your business turns up in these map pack results. So that's an important thing. So last week I talked about the types of searches that actually bring people to your website. So searches that are related to things like optometrist near me, eye doctor near me, eye test near me. All of these types of searches tend to show up as a local map pack. So if you can get into that, that's important, because these listings with the stars and the average star rating, they're very visible and they do get a lot of clicks. So it's definitely worth trying to do. Another important thing to note is that sometimes excerpts from these reviews can show up in the local map pack. So, for example, if I let's say somebody left a comment, if they come to my eye care practice and they left a comment along the lines of this practice has an excellent range of Tom Ford eyewear, something like that, right? It would mean that if somebody else was to search for, let's say, Tom Ford eyewear near me, then that person's comment may appear as like just a short excerpt in this local map pack result. And so, of course, that's probably going to attract my attention and maybe get the click as well. So these comments, they can also be very helpful in that way. And I think it's common consumer behavior now for people to check star ratings and check out the reviews before they decide to interact with a company, whether they buy something or whether they order a service. I think Amazon's kind of trained us into that kind of thinking now, checking the ratings and checking the reviews. So I know my wife always checks the reviews before she buys anything. Yes, and so another important point about this too is that I think you do want to build up your reviews to future-proof yourself against something that I'm quite certain is coming to Australia before long, and this is something called local service ads. Now, these are a kind of a new type of ad that Google already has in North America and some European countries. It's in the UK, it's in Ireland, it's in some other European continental countries. So what it is at the very top, like they give high priority to these. At the very top, there'll be like the name of your business. There'll be a green check mark. It'll say something like license verified by Google, and it'll show like how many reviews you have and your star rating as well. So think of them as a bit like Google ads that you pay for now, but it's a different type of ad. With these ones, you only pay Google if you actually get like a booking. So it's not, so with the current Google ad system, you pay on a pay-per-click basis. But with local service ads, you only pay if somebody actually books an appointment. So they already have these for optometrists and ophthalmologists in those other countries I mentioned. So I think when they do come out in Australia, they're going to be very popular. And there are limited spaces in the top of the screen for these ads. So Google is going to give preference to businesses that already have a decent number of reviews, and it probably will also influence like how much you actually pay for those leads. So if you've got a lot of reviews, if you've got a good star rating, it probably means that you're going to pay less per appointment that you get through those types of ads. So, as I said, future-proof your business. All right. So if you've just joined the broadcast, please leave a comment in the chat. Tell me where you are in the world. tell me the name of the town or the state or the country if you're outside Australia, because I'd like to know. And as I said, if you've got any comments, don't be shy. Just leave a comment, and I'll try to answer them as we go. All right. Well, how can I get more reviews? So we all probably agree by now that that reviews are important. So I think in a nutshell, the way to get more reviews is to ask for them. It's really not more complicated than that. So like there's one client I'm working with now, and like he in his business they've really struggled for a long time with not having enough Google reviews, and I keep mentioning that this is something that we need to really improve. But I think the penny dropped over the Christmas period. He took his team out for dinner somewhere, and at the end of the dinner, the waitress came out, and she said to the table, the group, "Did you enjoy your meal?" And of course, everyone did. And she said, "Oh well, if you have, then it would really help out our restaurant if you could leave us a Google review." And he was just like amazed when everyone at the table was getting out their phones and leaving a review right then and there. So it just shows that really you've all you need to do is ask for it. Now, I think there is a way to ask that's going to increase your chances of getting it. I think it always helps if you explain why you're asking for a review. Like if you say something along the lines of, we'd like it if you left us a review because it helps us to continually improve our service, something like that. Or, please leave a review because it helps us to serve our local community as an independent eye care practice, something like that. There was a study, there's a psychological experiment done at Harvard University years ago, where they actually found that people are more likely to help you when you give a reason behind your request. Just saying, because this and this. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here. So this is what one of my clients is doing. They've got a graphic in the reception area. And you can see it's got a cute dog there with glasses on. So that's a bit of a pattern interrupt. It's not something we expect to see. And they're asking for a favor. Ask us. It says, "Can we ask a favor?" And it gives instructions about how they can leave a review. So you need to be logged into your Google account and scan the QR code. So I've sort of blacked out the details there of the QR code and the logo of the business and the URL of where that Google reviews form is. But you get the idea. So having something like that, whether you laminate it or put it in like an A4 frame or something and just leave it in the reception area, so then it's kind of easy for your reception staff to just kind of point to it and say, it would really help us out if you could leave a review, and then your patient will hopefully get out their phone and scan the QR code. So make it easy for people, that really helps. Another thing you can do is to send an email or an SMS message to your patient, like after their appointment, maybe the next day. And I think that's just kind of good customer service anyway. And in that email or SMS, you can include a link to your Google reviews form. Now, if you're wondering where you get this link from, it's pretty easy. All you need to do is just go to Google, do a search for the name of your business. And if you're logged in with your Google account, the same one that you're using to manage your Google business profile, when you search for the name of your business, at the very top, you should see these icons. You can see at the bottom of the screen here. So you'll have a link that'll take you to the edit profile page of your Google business profile, right? You can the third one along there, you can add photos to your Google business profile. Also a very good idea. And so on. But the bottom right one, it says ask for a review. So when you click on that, you'll actually get like it'll take you to a page with a URL that you can share with your patients, and that link then takes them directly to the a form where they can give you a review and a star rating. So I hope that makes sense. So if that makes if that makes sense, what I've talked about so far, leave a 1 in the chat. Just type 1. Just give me a sign that that this is registering. All right. So are there any rules about asking for reviews? Well, Google does strictly prohibit incentivizing reviews. So you cannot ask, well, you cannot offer a discount or a bonus for leaving a review. So like I remember last year I had a call with one potential new client, and after I checked his website, the thing that I noticed right away is down the bottom of the website it said, oh, thank you, Megan. Yeah, so I noticed right away that on his website it said, leave us a Google review and get 10% off your next pair of frames. And I thought, and I said, look, you're gonna have to take that off your website, because if you get reported to Google, there's a chance that you could have your Google business profile suspended for something like that. So even if you're not asking for people to leave a good review, like even if you're just saying, leave us any kind of review, that's still incentivizing, and it's against Google's terms and conditions. So you can't do that. Another thing that Google doesn't want us doing is what they call review gating. So you might have the idea that, okay, we'll send out an email to our patients and ask them, did you have a good experience with us? Did you have a good appointment? And then the ones who say yes, we will just ask these people to give us a review. Okay. You can't do that. So that's something else that's against Google's terms and conditions. They don't want you to be like selective about who you're asking to leave a review. That's review gating. One thing you should never do is buy fake reviews. Now, I think there are some services out there that'll deliver hundreds of Google reviews if you pay them enough money. But one thing, I mean, Google's very smart. They've got some very smart people working for them. They're more than likely they're going to find out. Don't ask me how, but they have a way of finding out these things if somebody's just buying bulk fake reviews. But on top of that, it's illegal, and you could get into trouble with the ACCC over it, the Australian Consumer Commission. If your employees, family members, also prohibited from leaving Google reviews because of conflict of interest. One thing that might surprise many people, though, is that suppliers are okay. Outside vendors are okay. So it's not just restricted to patients. It's anyone who has had some interaction with your business. So if you've got like sales reps who are frequently visiting your office, you could ask them to leave you a Google review, and it's perfectly fine. They might say something like, I'm always received with a warm and friendly greeting when I visit this practice, or they have plenty of parking, and it's a modern office, things like that. If you do get a lot of referrals from another health practitioner, they can leave you a review as well. So don't overlook those. All right. So what does APRA say about reviews? So APRA, of course, stands for the Australian Health Professionals Regulatory Authority, and so this is where I bring out the big fat upside down, big fat disclaimer notice. As you can see, no expense has been spared in the production of this live broadcast. But so I'm not, I'm not an expert on APRA. I'm not even a member of APRA. So before you make any decisions around APRA compliance, you should do your own research and make your own decisions. But what I am about to tell you, I do have some confidence in, based on my own research of APRA's website and corroborated with information from third-party sources as well. So what APRA says is that advertisers are not responsible for removing or trying to remove testimonials published on platforms that they do not control, or sites that are not advertising regulated health service. So that means Google. Like if somebody leaves a review on Google, you nine times out of 10 you can't get that removed, unless there's some reason which we'll talk about later. But basically APRA's stance on this is that, well, that's something that's not directly under your control, so it is what it is. Yelp is another platform like this, so you have no control over what people write on Yelp. It's another review site. Facebook is a little different because you do have the ability to remove reviews from your own Facebook page. What about using reviews on your website though? Okay, now this is where it gets a little more involved again. So what APRA says is that what they call testimonials are anything that is a recommendation or positive statement about the clinical aspects of your service, right? So if you've got a patient who's like talking about the great keratoconus treatment that they had in your clinic, that would count as I think a testimonial, and it's something that you are not supposed to put on your website. However, if somebody's making a comment about something that doesn't reference clinical aspects, then by APRA's own words here, this is chapter and verse, they say not all reviews or positive comments made about a regulated health service are considered testimonials. For example, comments about customer service or communication style that do not include a reference to clinical aspects are not considered testimonials for the purposes of the national law, section 133. So if somebody leaves a comment to say, like, Dr. Smith has a very friendly bedside manner, staff are always very friendly, I'm always treated warmly, I've been coming to this practice for years, that all that type of stuff doesn't mention any clinical services, so it's absolutely fine to put that on your website. So the key points here. So apparently there's nothing that prohibits practitioners from asking for a Google review. So I probably wouldn't try and coach patients as to what they should write. I think I'd just leave it, just very open and say, look, please, if you can give us a Google review, that would really help because of this, and this. But there's nothing in APRA's rules that say you can't do that, as far as I can tell. And it's okay to use Google reviews on your website if they don't mention those clinical aspects. And so there's a URL on here where you can check it for yourself, and I'll include this link in the notes. So does that'll make sense so far? Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask before we move on? If you've got a question, so please type it in the chat. If all this makes sense, can you just type 2, the number 2? I'd just like to know if any of this is leaving confusion before we move on. If it makes sense, just type it 2. All right. So what can you do if patient reviews don't show up? So this is a common complaint among business owners, and it could be for any number of valid reasons. So there's a list of potential things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you'd like to know what some of those things could be, there's a link to an article, a blog article on my website, so you can check that out. Or it could be just Google's review algorithm going haywire. And that's kind of what happened actually last week. Was I remember it was on a Sunday morning. I was drinking my coffee and I got a message from a client saying, "Hey Paul, we've just suddenly lost 10 reviews. Can you check and find out what's going on?" And I thought, well, that's a bit odd, even for Google. And sure enough, so normally they had like 79 reviews, but that morning it had dropped to 69. However, I went through and actually like manually counted how many reviews were there, and there were still 79 reviews. And so I thought that's curious. And so I also saw people in some Facebook marketing groups that I'm a member of talking about exactly the same thing happening with them. So it seems like it was just like a temporary bug in Google's system, and they've since corrected that. So she's now got 79 reviews again. So things like this happen even to Google. But if you know a patient has left you a review, but it's not showing up, what I would say is, first of all, wait. It can sometimes take up to 30 days for a review to appear. I don't know why, but I think first of all, just wait, just be patient with it. If after 30 days it's still not appearing, what you can do is ask that person to take a screenshot of their review, because it's probably something that, if they've left a review, it's probably something that they can still see in their Google account, even if you can't see it in your reviews. So what I would do is ask them to take a screenshot. Now, maybe some people are not sort of technically comfortable as others. So what you can do is send them this infographic. Now, this one is also on this page of my website, in this blog article. So you're perfectly fine to download this graphic and just keep it as something that you can send to your patients, right? And this infographic actually shows step by step how to take a screenshot, either with iPhone or Android, and once they've got that screenshot, they can send it to you. And then what you can do is submit that to Google support and ask them if they can activate that review. So it's a process, but I think the first thing you need to do is get the patient to give you that screenshot and then pass it on to Google. All right, so when you get a positive review, what should you do about it? And this is probably the bulk of the reviews that you get. So what I think you should do is, first of all, thank the person personally, like use their name. For example, thank you so much, Steve, for your feedback. So you should try to respond to all of your reviews. If they've mentioned some positive aspect of your service, then you should reference that. So, for example, if they say something about your staff, you could say, well, your kind comments about our reception staff mean a lot to us, something along those lines. So it's also an opportunity for you to emphasize and reinforce the values that you try to incorporate into your business. So you could say something along the lines of, we try really hard to make sure everyone in the community has a positive experience when they visit our practice, something like that. So these replies, rather than just use a canned response to everyone, I think you should take a little bit of effort and actually take it as an opportunity to really say something about your business. I think you do have to be careful not to mention anything about the clinical aspects of the visit, because that could be a breach of privacy laws. So you couldn't. So, like, for example, you shouldn't say something like, "Hey Steve, thanks for the review. I hope those ortho K lenses are working out for you." So you're revealing details of whatever the service was that they had. So you don't want to do that. What about negative reviews? Well, this happens. I mean, we all have bad days. Some people just get out of the wrong side of the bed some days. And I think the first thing is don't freak out about it. because it's 100% normal. And I would even argue that maybe it could be beneficial. And here's why. So there was a study done about 5 years ago, I think, where they looked at a business, the average star rating for businesses, and the average conversion rate on their website. And what I mean is, like, somebody visited their page, how likely would they be to purchase something or book a service. And there's like a pretty good, pretty strong correlation. The higher your average reviews, the higher your conversion rate, up to a point. And when it got to 4.9 as the average star rating, that was actually like the peak conversion percentage. For businesses that had a perfect 5-star rating, the conversions actually dropped down a bit. So, and you might ask yourself, like, why? Like, 5 is better than 4.9. Why would your conversions be less? And it seems like people are skeptical. And so if somebody sees a perfect 5-star rating, they might think, well, this is too good to be true. So, like having a couple of bad apples in the pile isn't necessarily going to hurt you, I guess, is the point that we're making here. Another thing is that if there is a legitimate problem in your practice, then you would want to know about that and correct it, right? People who complain about something, they could be doing you a favor. So if somebody has a bad experience, they're going to tell someone. They're going to tell their friends. They're going to tell their family, their colleagues. If they tell you, then at least you can do something about it. At least you can take action, make sure it doesn't happen again. Or it could be an opportunity for you to shine as well. So there are plenty of examples of where somebody has complained about a business. That business has responded really well and turned that critic into an advocate. So that could happen for you as well if you handle the reviews in the right way. So I think always be professional, take ownership of the problems, offer solutions, and if it's really sort of, if you really don't want to get into the weeds, if it's a complicated situation, I think in that case you're best off asking if they can give you a call and take it offline and deal with it that way. But other people are going to judge you by how well you handle these sort of comments. So if you're sort of evasive and sound emotional, then you're just harming yourself. So so respond professionally. And hopefully, I'm sure this is going to be the case with most businesses, the huge number of positive reviews is going to outweigh the small number of negative ones. And that's why it's important to have some sort of system in place to get these positive reviews and collect them, because when somebody has a bad experience, they're always highly motivated to leave a bad review. If somebody has a good experience, they might not be as highly motivated to do that unless you ask them. So I think the general rule is you should reply to all comments, but I think there's one exception to that, is if you suspect that the review is fake, meaning like not from a genuine patient. I've seen some people recommend that you don't reply to that one, because it could make it harder for you to get Google to remove that later on. So that would probably be the one exception to the rule, that you should reply to all comments. So what can you do about a fake or inappropriate review? Well, for every review, you'll see on the top, if you look at this graphic on the screen, the top right corner, you've got these three vertical dots. So we call that a kebab menu, by the way, because web designers love using food when they talk about things, menus, hamburger menus, whatever. Anyway, so what you do is if you click on this kebab menu, you'll open up a drop down, and the second option on there will be report the review. Okay, so, and when you click on that, that gives you an opportunity to raise a flag on this review with Google. Okay, these are not my reviews either, by the way, in case you're wondering. These are just from the internet. Yeah, so it could be an unethical competitor. I'm sure nobody listening to this has ever done anything this sketchy, but I have had clients who I had a client who was a GP, and he was convinced that his competition across the road was leaving negative reviews for him. So I don't know if that was ever the case, but he was convinced that it was. So it could be happening. But there are just people who just randomly, might want to cause trouble for you as well. So Google doesn't generally want to get involved if there's some disagreement about the facts. Like if somebody's complaining that you gave them the wrong prescription, that's a factual thing that Google's probably not going to get involved in. But if there has been some breach of Google's policies, then that's grounds for you to ask for that review to be removed. So if it's a fake review from somebody who's not a patient, if the comments are harassing, if they're using profanity, if they're including some sort of promotional link, then that's definitely cause to ask for Google to remove it. And I've heard some people get reviews removed like within a few days, and with others it can take a couple of weeks. So I think it's case by case basis, really. All right, so now action points. So what I would like you to do, if you've watched this and got value out of it, is I think number one, talk to your staff about having a strategy in place to get more Google reviews. I think it's really important that you get buy-in from your whole team on this, because I think the practitioners are often out the back, in doing consultations. The last point of contact for most patients is the front office staff. Now, I said you can't incentivize patients to leave a review, but you can incentivize your team to ask for those reviews. And if I was a practice owner, I would do something along the lines of like, listen, team, I'd like us to get 10 reviews on our Google business profile this month, and if we hit that KPI, I'm going to shout pizza, shout lunch for the team. So a lot of things are expensive in Australia these days, but fortunately pizza is still relatively affordable, I think. So get buy-in from your team. Ask them for ideas about how you can increase your Google reviews, but I think that it's got to be a team approach. I think I'd like you to think about having a process in place to review and respond to all of your valid Google reviews. Another thing I think I didn't mention is that you can like reviews. If somebody leaves a review, you should like it. That sends some sort of notification to the person who left the review. So again, it's a signal that you are being responsive. Consider adding the QR code to a graphic with a link to your Google reviews form. Put that in the reception area. So I'll leave in the show notes for this a place where you can get a QR code printed. But if you just go on Google and search something like free QR code generator, there's dozens of them, and all you do is just drop in the URL for the Google review link, and it'll generate a QR code, which you can then, it'll be like a PNG file or something, which you can then paste into a graphic and get it printed, laminated, whatever. And also consider adding one of these links into your follow-up process. Like I said, I think it's just good customer service to follow up with people after their appointment, and send them an SMS, send them an email asking them, hey, we hope everything went well with your appointment. It would really help us if you left a Google review. Here's the link, right? So these are the things that I think that you should take away from this presentation and try and implement into your business. So before we wrap up, does anyone have have a question or a comment, last chance before we go. So if you do, could you please drop it into the chat? If you've got value from this presentation, can you type a 3? All right. Well, the recording of this video is going to be uploaded to YouTube in the next couple of days. And so if you are watching this on YouTube, it'd really help me out if you gave the video a like and hit the subscribe for the channel button as well. All right. Thanks, Megan. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. So to get in contact with me, if you'd like to talk more about any aspect of thank you. Thanks very much. If you'd like to talk with me about any aspect of your digital marketing, whether that be revisions to your website or talking about SEO, how to get more patients, basically, or a different patient audience, then you can get in contact with me either through my website, which is opticsdigital.net, through my LinkedIn profile, or you can email me at paul@opticsdigital.net. I think probably LinkedIn is probably the best place to do it, because that's the one that I'm checking several times a day. All right, so yeah, all right, so thanks very much, everyone, and I hope you got value out of this. I'm going to be doing one of these broadcasts every Wednesday afternoon, so so stay tuned for the next one next Wednesday. Okay, bye for now.